Well, I always think May and Yay. May-yea. Well, Meyye wines, I currently make all the wine at my old winery, Story Winery, up in the Sierra foothills. But we source grapes from two regions in California, Sierra foothills and Sonoma County. So Sierra foothills, I've been making wine up there with my father-in-law I just celebrated my 31st vintage.
Wow.
But my family all originates from Sonoma County, and I plan to move back to Sonoma County here in the next year or two. So it's kind of an homage to where I've kind of learned how to make wine and the expertise of making Sierra foothill wines, but also sourcing some grapes back from my ancestral homelands. So I'm a member of the Federated Indians of Grayton Rancheria, which is a combination of Coast Miwok and Southern Pomo peoples. So the ancestral lands of Coast Miwok are all of Marin County and southern Sonoma, and the Pomo, again, Southern Pomo, which would be all Sonoma County. No, there's very few Native American wineries and even fewer Native American winemakers. So I'm a little bit of an oddball in that not only am I a winemaker, I actually own my own brand as well. Well, the other thing too is a lot of people don't realize the actual first winemakers in California were all Native Americans. So at each of the missions, once the mission vineyards were established and the winemakers that had come up from Mexico had trained the local inhabitants, they would just take those skilled winemakers and move them to the next mission to start making sacramental wine as they went from mission to mission to mission. So of the 21 missions, 17 actually produced wine. And I actually descend from Mission Indians, and 3 of those missions actually produced wine that my family was at. So I don't have actual documented proof that they were winemakers, but if they were men and they were attached to a mission that had vineyards, pretty much they were working those vines at some point. So the brand is Meyye, which in Coast Miwok just means birds. And when I was originally coming up with the idea of this brand and trying to come up with a name, the first wine I produced was the Zinfandel, and its name is Plotchuk. Now, every marketing expert I would ever ask about this would tell me, do not name a wine Plotchuk. That is like a mouthful. But I had this idea of a woodpecker putting an acorn into a knotted piece of wood. And acorns are very important to California Native Americans. So that was kind of the kernel of my thought of what I was going to do. But I do a very specific aging thing with most Meyye wines, in that the first Zinfandel was hand-picked. It was brought from these different lots that were being used for these other Zinfandels. So right as they were being blended and made for bottling, I would take the best lots and put them back into neutral oak for 6 more months. And that special blend became the Plotchuk Zinfandel blend. And so those wines spend 2 years in oak, the last 6 months in all neutral, and then they're glass aged for at least 3 to 5 years before they're even released. Now the other winemaking experts would tell me, how can you make any money by doing any of this? And I tell them that number one is I make wine for my friends. And it's wine that me and my wife enjoy, and I know that my friends will enjoy. And I named it Plotchuk because I wanted to represent the language. Coast Miwok language was almost extinct until our tribe was re-recognized in 2000. And my mom was a huge influence in trying to get the tribe's language restored. So being around her and seeing all of this language restoration effort she was doing, I thought, maybe I can do my part. So I named the brand Meyye, and each of the labels represent the native word for that bird. So for example, the Rhone blend that I do, the Chateauneuf-du-Pape style wine I do, is called Chocotok, and that's the California quail. The brown pelican is Omai, and I do a Chardonnay that's called Kalupi. And each of those birds are native to the area from where I pull the grapes. You'll never see, I don't know, a parrot on one of my bottles. I just had to ramp up recently, so I'm up to about 800 cases. Now, it sounds like a tiny amount. I'm still an executive winemaker at another winery where I make thousands of cases. But for this brand is strictly allocation based. So I only allocate a certain amount to direct to folks and then distribute to select restaurants around the country. There is, once you sign up on the list. So I kind of stumbled into the wine business. I like to say I married into the wine business. My wife, who wasn't my wife at the time, I had just started dating her. Her folks took a risk and decided to throw caution to the wind and buy a winery in 1992. And to my mother-in-law's credit, this is her quote, not mine. She says, "We thought we knew a lot about the winemaking. And once we had a winery, we realized all we knew how to do was drink it." So they had to learn everything from the ground up. And me and my wife were there pretty much all the time, especially through the first 5-6 vintages. And so I learned how to make wine shoulder to shoulder with my father-in-law, just helping him see how he was doing. My father-in-law was a maverick making wines. His name was Bruce Tishner, and this was at Story Winery. And he was doing things with Zinfandel nobody else was doing, or he was just going crazy and trying all sorts of different things. But he developed a knack for really being passionate about each variety's characteristics. He wasn't trying to copy anybody. He basically wrote his own script. And so I think a little bit of that stayed with me. And then in 2011, his health started to fail, so I came back to the winery to help prepare it to be sold. But in 2011 was probably the absolute worst time to try and sell a winery. It was after the recession had really hit, and it was really rock bottom, and there was this horrible stories in the wine industry of people losing everything. So I took a look around, realized that a lot of stuff was broken. A lot of the wine quality had really fallen off a cliff. So I spent time trying to build back the brand and get it back to being one of the premier producers in the Sierra foothills. And then we sold it in 2019. But in 2014, I was counseled on, I didn't really have a Ferrari. You know, I was making about 13 different wines at that point. But I had some consultants come in and it's like, you don't have that really high-end bottle. Everything's kind of, you know, they're all good. It's just they're all kind of at the same tier. Do you have anything you've been working on that you could do that? And I said, well, it's funny you should ask. I was starting to do a barrel select program with the Zinfandel, and I was, because we had done, we do 7 different Zinfandels, 5,000 cases and 7 different Zinfandels. It's kind of, we got a lot to choose from. So I went through and I found the best barrels of the best lots, and he said, well, do something with that. And that's how Palachuk was born. So I didn't even know it was going to be Palachuk. I didn't know about Meyye. It was just going to be this high-end Zinfandel that I was doing for Story. But then when we went to sell the winery, I decided to keep the 5 years of production I had already done separate from the sale. And that was the cornerstone for Meyye's launch. It's Meyye Wines, MEYYEWINES.com. Also, we're on Instagram and Facebook, and always drop messages that way as well.